Well, good morning and welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder, and this is BRN AM for Friday, November 6th, 2020. And our top stories today, U.S. job growth cools in October, and the Ant Group IPO is suspended. Joining me now to discuss this and a lot more, Devin Banerjee, a Senior Financial Services Editor for LinkedIn and also the editor of the This Week in Finance newsletter, which of course you can find on the LinkedIn platform. Devin, welcome back to the program. Great to have you on this morning.
Thanks a lot, Jeff. Always good to chat.
Well, we love talking about these social media trends. Very important to keep abreast of what people are saying, what the responses are. So Devin, I know in the first segment you wanted to talk about jobs cooling here in the U.S. in the month of October.
That's right, Jeff. And to your point, it is a good week to look at what's trending outside of the main big story, which is the U.S. presidential election, of course. So in these two segments today, I'm going to go through two of our larger other popular stories this week. The first is ahead of the jobs report this Friday out of the BLS. Full disclosure, we're recording this on Thursday, so we don't have those figures just yet. But we do have the ADP report, which came out Wednesday. As you know, Jeff, this is data from the ADP Research Institute, and that shows changes to private payrolls. The takeaway was it was quite a disappointing report. So employers in the month of October added about $365,000 payrolls. That compares to 643,000, which was the expectation, and that's down from 753,000 that were added in September. And so that is, the BLS and ADP figures don't always correlate 100%, but it is kind of a preview of the BLS figures that we will get tomorrow, Friday morning. Of increasing concern, which we really saw throughout the conversation on LinkedIn around this trending item, of increasing concern was looming expiration of those UI benefits, the unemployment insurance benefits for the jobless in this country. Also, the looming expirations of eviction and foreclosure moratoriums. That is going to have some real human effects as this economic downturn continues. Also, the possibility of a government shutdown on December 11th. So really, regardless of who emerges as president or as either as president or president-elect out of this week, regardless of that, there's going to be a mountain of work really to be done. Michael Duggan, one of our LinkedIn members on the conversation, called it an uphill battle during an avalanche. Now, also what was interesting this week, kind of a related story, is, look, we've talked about and we've seen in the data millions, unfortunately, of Americans losing their job earlier in the pandemic, many of whom were lower paid workers, blue collar workers across the retail sector, restaurants, hospitality and leisure early in the pandemic. And really what we've started to see a little bit in the past couple of months, but really, dare I say, accelerating in recent weeks, is white collar job cuts starting to mount. So in recent weeks and months, we've seen thousands of these announced cuts from companies like ExxonMobil, Chevron, Charles Schwab, Raytheon, Allstate, Wells Fargo, Salesforce. And the reason these job cuts are so impactful is because these higher earning workers are the ones that spend the most, right? They spend more. And so we've seen this concern starting to ripple. In fact, just a couple of weeks ago, I was watching an interview with the CEO of Discover Financial, who said he's really worried about this spread in unemployment to white-collar jobs because of this snowball effect. As those companies, choose to lay off those higher-earning workers, they have that higher impact on the economy because they typically spend a lot, and that's going to impact other companies, and then there's this ripple effect. So, look, that's the concern right now this week. We will see tomorrow morning, Friday morning, what the BLS figures show for the jobs report for the month of October.
Well, Devin, and we talked about this numerous weeks, how there's not really a correlation between what the stock market does and the economy. And this week has been I would have expected it to complete opposite with a lot more volatility, but we've seen just the market kind of shoot up. So clearly the market likes whatever is happening, and we're not sure what exactly is happening with the presidential election. But it is very disappointing. And when you think about the UI benefits and whoever the president is and whatever the makeup of the Congress is, they've got a lot of work, as you said, to get done. If these UI benefits go away, that's going to impact people significantly. I'm thinking about holiday sales, retail sales, even though those may be down anyway because of the pandemic. And lastly, small businesses. There's no PPP money. There's nothing to help some of these small businesses. Maybe there is at the state level, but not at the federal level.
Yeah, Jeff, these federal programs and stimulus are, of course, still important, but even more so as we enter this holiday season and the winter season. You mentioned the pandemic. It's, we're only mentioning the pandemic, I don't know, 8-9 minutes into the segment, which is kind of crazy. That is the root of all of this. And another wave of infections, which looks, according to the data, like it may be on the way, or maybe the first wave never ended. But the point is that infections are not declining in the U.S. and that stimulus has still not come through, that additional stimulus. And to your point about how the election is looking, it looks like possibly more gridlock in Washington if Joe Biden does take the White House and and Republicans retain control of the Senate. And that may be some of the reason that investors have been driving the market higher this week, potentially because the tax cuts, the 2017 tax cuts that really benefited them from President Trump, have a lower probability, if not a zero probability, of being rolled back under a Republican-controlled Senate. So there are all these opposing factors, but I'm glad you mentioned, Jeff, at the end of the day, the human element of especially the unemployed in this country. I mean, they are the ones who are starting to enter this winter without the additional stimulus and support that they need.
Yeah, and by the way, they were voters too, and they voted in the election too. So they clearly, there's a lot that we've got to help people out with. We've got responsibilities as citizens, as members of Congress, as the president, as the Senate, to do things on their behalf. So let's hope that we can get some unity together, regardless of what the ultimate outcome is. Sounds like the UI, the benefits, that should be top of mind. Keeping the government open, clearly an important task. So a lot on whoever ascends to the White House or takes a seat in Congress or the Senate. Devin, I want to go to a very quick break. When we come back, we talked about it earlier this week. We're going to be talking about the Ant Group IPO being suspended. You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms, especially for the smaller businesses? I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
Hi folks, Joe Namath here, and if you're on Medicare, this is important. You're now entitled to eliminate copays and get dental care, dentures, eyeglasses, prescription coverage, in-home aids, unlimited transportation, and home-delivered meals, all at no additional cost. Plus, your zip code may have coverage with the Give Back benefit that adds money back to your Social Security check every month. Look, with the uncertainty of the virus and vaccines, you need to get everything you're entitled to. Here's the bottom line. Call to get significant benefits at no additional cost and see if your zip code has coverage with the Give Back benefit. Millions of people have trusted the Medicare Coverage Helpline. You can too. Call now. It's free.
Call 1-800-924-3920. That's 1-800-924-3920.
Welcome back. We're talking to Devin Banerjee, Senior Financial Services Editor for LinkedIn. Devin, thanks so much for staying with us this morning.
Absolutely, Jeff. Happy to.
Well, another big story this week, outside of the election, of course, was the Ant Group IPO, which we talked to your another contributor, Dan Klein, who I know you know very well, about the largesse, how big this IPO was, the biggest of all time. But Devin, in the span of a few days, things have reversed themselves. What can you tell us here?
Yeah, Jeff, Dan did a great job of previewing what was to come, and we were all highly anticipating this. In fact, a lot of financial journalists have been joking that this really is the biggest story of the week, potentially even larger than the U.S. election. So let's get into what happened, and then I'll get into some of the implications of it. So Ant Group is, China's largest fintech company, huge payment processor, huge consumer lender. A lot of people know it as its former name, Alipay. And it was set to list in an IPO this Thursday, which is today, for full disclosure, the day we're recording this Thursday in Shanghai and Hong Kong. It was expected to break all records, expected to raise in the range of about $34 to $37 billion, which would be the largest IPO of all time. It had attracted huge interest, of course, oversubscribed interest from institutional investors, as well as smaller retail investors. Now, what happened on Tuesday of this week is the Chinese government and the stock exchanges suspended the IPO. And it was a bit vague. I'll get into what they said and then what experts think all of that means. But they cited, quote, major issues, and they cited the changing regulatory regime around fintechs in China. Also on Monday, the day before this move was made, Ant Group's founder, Jack Ma, who you may also know as the founder of Alibaba, he's also, of course, one of the wealthiest people in the world. On Monday, he was called in by regulators for what they call supervisory interviews. And as I said, on Tuesday, when this announcement was made, the stock exchanges cited major issues and a changing regulatory environment. So look, there's really no precedent for this close to the IPO when share allocations were largely completed. I mean, investors had borrowed significant amounts on margin to lever up their purchases in this IPO. Now they and their brokerages are trying to unwind those. The underwriters, which actually included Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, of course, they had put a lot of work and effort into this offering. And look, the analysis out of this is that this is really a bad move or an own goal for China. I mean, this offering, this IPO was meant to be kind of a crowning achievement or a crowning event for a homegrown fintech company coming out of China. It was going to be valued at about $316 roughly billion. That's larger than Chinese banks and United States banks. As I said, it's a huge payment processor, actually the largest by volume in the world, managing about $17 trillion in the last 12 months. That's more than Visa, MasterCard, PayPal. It was importantly expected to shore up confidence in Hong Kong, which was one of the sites of the dual listing. It was expected to shore up confidence there after, as you and I have discussed, Jeff, earlier this year, China, kind of tightened its grip on Hong Kong. And it was intended to show that China is no longer dependent on the US capital markets to finance its large global corporations. Now, what do experts think actually happened behind the scenes? Well, late last month, Jeff, at the end of October, I think the speech was October 24th, Jack Ma gave a speech in which he criticized Chinese regulators and accused China's banks, most of which are state-owned, which you know, of having what he called a, quote, pawn shop mentality when it comes to consumer lending. So based on requiring high levels of collateral and guarantees to extend consumer credit. And really what most people believe is that China is rebuking Jack Ma for that speech. Also, what people are pointing to is that Ant Group really, as I mentioned, has grown its lending business quite a bit from being purely in the payment space. And that increases competition for Chinese banks, traditional lenders, which, as I said, most of which are state-owned. And there's this changing regulatory environment occurring in China around fintech. So what all of this means, Jeff, I'll wrap up in a second. What all this means is that the IPO is on hold, likely for at least 6 months, experts are saying. Ant Group will have to change some of its business model to comply with these new regulations. It's going to have to bolster its capital base, hold more loans on its balance sheet. Right now it holds like 2% of its loans on its balance sheet. That might have to be increased to 20 to 30%. That makes its balance sheet much more exposed to underperforming loans, bad loans, non-performing loans. And it really makes its business model more akin to a bank. And banks are highly regulated. So this really changes the risk profile of Ant Group. And a lot of bankers and capital market experts believe that when Ant Group comes back for its IPO, it's going to look very different and its valuation may be severely cut. So a lot of implications, a lot of things to think about. Of course, some of the reporting is still coming out about what actually happened behind the scenes. But this is really interesting for China. And, as I said, this was going to be a crowning event for China. And there's this tension between the Chinese Communist Party, the government, and the entrepreneur community and the innovators like Jack Ma and these companies that they're trying to build. And it's almost like basically in China, as we knew, in China, the government has the final say, has the last word.
Yeah, well, just from the outside looking in, and obviously we're not there, it just sounds like they're making him pay a penalty for expressing a point of view, something he probably wouldn't have happened here, I guess, in the United States. But just a sense that what if you were, like a mom and pop investor who wanted to invest in this and had it maybe planned to invest in this. Now you've got to kind of unravel that plan. If things are going to look different for Alibaba, you may want to rethink your strategy of investing. So what does that mean to all these mom and pops, and what does it mean to the institutions that are, here in the U.S. and elsewhere that are promoting this or were promoting this IPO?
Yeah, I mean, it's a dent to that attitude of global investors who look to Chinese companies, especially successful Chinese companies that are global in nature, like Ant Group or Alibaba. And it really just reinforces that at the end of the day, you can invest in these companies, thinking that they have full control over their business models and their future. But again, in China, the government has the last word. And so it's like everyone was hoping that things were opening up and that Ant Group would be this crowning achievement, and then the government in China kind of did what it is wont to do and has historically done, which is stepped in and like you said, punished an entrepreneur in this case. I mean, China probably wants to foster, one would think, more entrepreneurs like Jack Ma, but entrepreneurs are going to speak their mind once in a while. And so how is that push and pull, how's that dynamic going to look going forward? Who knows?
Yeah, I think, I guess the comment I'll make is Jack Ma has an incredible personal story, a perseverance that I find as an entrepreneur, just, he's like amazing. He's right up there with some of the most amazing entrepreneurs in the world. And it's almost like snatching defeat for victory, or whatever the saying is, because you had what you were saying, Devin, is this could be a crowning achievement, and by all accounts it will be. But now you're kind of reaffirming to the world who's in charge and what this, maybe things haven't changed, to your earlier point.
Exactly.
Well, Devin, we're going to leave it there. Always a pleasure catching up with you. Great stories again this week. Take care. Have a wonderful rest of the week and a great weekend. And we'll talk to you again very soon.
Sounds good, Jeff. Take care.
And that wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Have a topic of interest or someone you think we should talk to? Drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the news in retirement markets, technology, personal finance, so much more, check out our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse. Don't forget, we're back again tomorrow for BRN Weekly. I'll be joined by a very special guest, and we'll take a look at some of our best segments for the week. So until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
Are you being audited, and do you owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes? Is the IRS threatening to take more of your money? Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. The IRS can freeze your assets and seize your bank accounts, but you can stop these IRS actions. The Tax Doctor will work with you using our years of experience to represent your case to help you get the best resolution under the IRS guidelines. Help is here to deal with the IRS to reduce your stress. We've handled thousands of cases, so we know what we're doing. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes, do not call the IRS alone. Call a Tax Doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
Call 800-224-6439.